Come on. Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane. It's the last day of October. It's the Wednesday 31st of the month. And the title of this morning's broadcast is CUADRILLA and Claire Perry, MP, turning fracking into farce. And of course, it would be highly amusing if it wasn't so tragic. But let's have a quick recap of what has occurred over the last literally 16 days or so. Because on the 15th of October, CUADRILLA reportedly commenced fracking. Now, we know they didn't just fire up the pumps and go hell for leather. They brought the pumps up to pressure very, very gently in the first instance to do what is known as a mini frac, just to test the geology, to see what pressure was necessary to start to get the geology to react, i.e. to fracture, and to release the trapped gases in this tight geology. Well, just 3 days later, Blackpool experienced its first seismic event for quite some time. I think there's been one or two others since CUADRILLA vacated Priest Hall, where of course they triggered something in the region of, I think it was about 80 odd seismic events. But the most significant two were on April the 1st, 2011, which was a 2.3, and May 27th, which was a 1.5. Now, although CUADRILLA didn't exactly rush to put their hand up and say, sorry, Gov, it was us, they eventually conceded that it was most probably due to their activities at Priest Hall. And of course, that led to the moratorium on fracking being put in place in the UK, subsequently lifted in mid-December of 2012. So here we are, almost 6 years later, and of course, the only reason that CUADRILLA are there is because central government, in the face of Saeed Javid, the Deutsche bankster, put into politics to take care of the bankster's interests. He overturned Lancashire County Council's decision to reject fracking in the Fylde, and that's why CUADRILLA are now at Preston New Road. And of course, they've been there since January of 2017, and originally, of course, this was intended to be effectively about a 9-month project. 3 months to construct the pad, 3 months to drill the wells, and then 3 months to do the fracking. So right now, of course, they are nearly 22 months into that 9-month project, and it's not going particularly well, because since the 18th of October, there has now been 31 seismic events in Blackpool. So CUADRILLA, you have very successfully turned Blackpool into the earthquake capital of the UK. Of course, that was an honour, inverted commas, that was previously held by Ollerton in Nottinghamshire. And the reason they held that significance was because of the coal mining activity in that area. And of course, as Professor Peter Stiles has pointed out, much of the targeted geology of the unconventional gas industry lies beneath not just heavily faulted geology, but also beneath heavily mined geology. So, you know, what could possibly go wrong? Because here CUADRILLA are fracking in an area that hasn't been subjected to heavy mining. That's a few miles to the east. But of course, the reality is that whatever occurs here is likely to not just be mirrored in other locations across the Bowland Shale, but to become exponentially worse. And INEOS and iGas and the other companies across the Bowland Shale who hold licenses must be wincing at the moment at the sheer embarrassment of Francis Egan and Claire Perry's 1984 Animal Farm-esque agility to not just deny that they've made previous statements, which are a matter of public record, but also to modify their observations and statements. And of course, the most significant one is that, previously everyone was saying, look, you don't have to worry, it's extremely rare that any seismic activity would occur from fracking above 0.5 on the Richter scale. But of course, now that they've had a few 0.5s and they've even had a 1.1, which, as was pointed out, they had a 0.8, of course, the day previous, and a 1.1 is 700 times a greater magnitude than a 0.8, because the Richter scale is a logarithmic scale. So Francis Egan is now pushing to get that limit lifted. So, for the past 6 years, this industry and the government has been hanging its hat on the fact there's nothing to worry about because we have a traffic light system that will shut fracking down if they hit 0.5. What they omitted to tell you is, well, we are going to shut it down, but just for 18 hours. And then they can carry on again. And from CUADRILLA's own frack plan, it would appear that they have pretty much acknowledged, and of course this has been signed off, that it's only when they get to about 3.1 on the Richter scale, which is significantly higher than the 2.3, of course, that they triggered at pre-soil on April the 1st, 2011. It's only when they get to 3.1 that they really need to start worrying about it. Well, of course, even if they get to 3.1, Francis Egan is going to be in the media saying, well, look, it's okay because Blackpool Tower is still standing. And so consequently, we can't be having that much effect. It's only when probably Blackpool Tower falls into the sea that Francis Egan is likely to acknowledge, well, no, he wouldn't even acknowledge it then, because a sociopath can't. A sociopath cannot accept reality. The only reality they're interested in is their own myopic version of reality. And of course, we're seeing the same with Claire Perry. And I have to say, Greg Clark, what a masterstroke, putting an intellectual pygmy who craves the media like Claire Perry between you and the frackers and the general public, basically. Because, you've now got Claire Perry and Natasha Engel, the shale gas commissioner, who in her spare time, of course, has somewhat dubious links with Elbit Systems, the Israeli weapons manufacturer that produces white phosphorus and cluster bombs. So, Natasha Engel would appear to have as much empathy with the people who live in the sacrifice zone for unconventional gas exploitation as she does with the people of Gaza. But Greg Clark, you've put these two between you and fracking in the hope that you can protect your political career. Well, let me just make the observation that you might think that Natasha Engel and Claire Perry can take all the heat and you can come out of this unscathed. But the reality is that you can delegate the responsibility, but you cannot delegate the accountability. That is very firmly on your shoulders, and you know it. But right now, of course, you're playing the game, and Claire Perry and Natasha Engel are the sacrificial lambs. So that when this sorry industry finally comes crashing down, they can be sacrificed, they'll crash and burn with it, and you think, can continue on your upward trajectory towards your ultimate ambition of leadership of the Tory party. Well, that ain't going to happen. But anyway, meanwhile, Francis Egan is, of course, trying to conflate vibration with seismic activity. And, whinging Egan in the media over the last couple of days, stating that, well, a 0.8, well, you can't really feel it at the top. And anyway, it's no more than a passing bus or the recorded activity from a building site. Fundamental difference, Fanny. You are targeting the geology. You are causing seismic movement of the geology, which is then felt at the surface. And that movement creates permanent change to the geology. A passing bus or work on a building site creates vibration. It's momentary. There is no relationship between vibration and the seismic activity that you are triggering beneath Preston Road. And, you know, the reality is that the people of Blackpool, you know, what are you doing? You're just sitting back and watching this company effectively wipe out the value of your property. And yesterday, of course, the pro-frackers wanted to challenge my observation that property in Blackpool is now worthless. So they were sending me, you know, heaps of stuff showing valuations from estate agent sites. Well, let me make this observation. There's a hell of a difference between a valuation and a property actually selling. You can value it at what you like. I mean, I could value this stone wall that I'm standing alongside at 25 million because of its historic value. I can do what I like. But until somebody comes along and pays me that money, it's basically worthless. So your properties, particularly in the Peel Green area, particularly in Kirkham and Wesham, and as you draw the radius out from Preston Road, CUADRILLA brag of what they've brought to Lancashire in the way of about 3 jobs, and all those are security guards. But what they conveniently forget is the value that they have effectively extracted from Lancashire by destroying property values in that area. So, you know, if you want to see what the nature of the beast is, then, you know, put your house on the market and just see who comes along and offers you what you're asking for it, what you've been told its value is. Because I can take you to people who have had their houses on the market basically since Priest Hall and still haven't managed to find a buyer. So, you know, let's face reality. And, you know, forgive me, there are, of course, a few people in the Blackpool area that are extremely concerned about this. But, you know, now is the time to absolutely come together and focus on the real issues here. And the real issue is not the surface impact of a 0.8 or a 1.1 or even a 3.0. It's the subsurface impact and the fact that the well is likely to be damaged, just as it was at Priest Hall. And of course, CUADRILLA carried on pumping, even though it turns out they knew that the well had been deformed in the seismic event that had occurred previously. So, do we trust CUADRILLA? Yeah, well, moot point really, isn't it? The reality is that unless they were under the kind of scrutiny that they are right now, would they admit to any of this? Extremely unlikely. And, you know, it didn't escape me that they were extremely quick to state, after pulling the plug after the seismic event the other day, I think 0.8, that within an hour they said they checked the well integrity. Really? Well, it's about time that there was independent analysis of the well integrity. Now, I somehow doubt that, you know, Schlumberger would mislead. It's not worth their reputation in the industry. But the scrutiny, the sheer scrutiny that needs to be applied to this industry is such that there needs to be an independent assessment of the well integrity after each of these seismic events, because that is what will ultimately lead to the contamination, to the rogue leaching of gases, to the migration of fluids potentially into the aquifers and the groundwater. So the farce here is that pretty much everybody with an ounce of common sense knows that this industry is never going to take off in the UK. But of course, common sense is like hen's teeth in Westminster, and if you are drawing a salary check from the unconventional gas industry. So the decision ain't going to ultimately come voluntarily from either Westminster or the unconventional gas industry. And this is where we, the collective we, come into our own power, because individually and collectively it's crucial that we apply the pressure like never before. Right now, there cannot be too many people in the country that are not aware that fracking triggers earthquakes. And at the moment, they are minor, but cumulative impact cannot be ignored. And if ultimately the 4,000 or so wells are drilled, ain't gonna happen, but if 4,000 or so wells were drilled across the Poland Shale, some of the most faulted geology in the UK, compounded by a couple of centuries of coal mining, then the risk of seismic event, the risk of well failure, the risk of contamination is about 100%. It's a given. But we have an opportunity, we have a tremendous opportunity here to get this shut down once and for all. So look beyond the rhetoric. Call out these charlatans. These people who think that because they're saying something now, they can erase what they said just a few months ago. And because for 6 years they've been hanging their hat on 0.5 and telling people that, you know, don't worry because it's extremely rare for anything above a 0.5. Well, that's not what the information now says on the British Geological Survey's website. So, all to play for here. And, you know, INEOS, Jim Ratcliffe, it's time to, you know, take a look for yourself and, you know, just ignore these people who tell you what you want to hear because their next salary check depends on it. Bottom line is, you know, you could do better spending your money elsewhere, and I think you know that. It's really just a case of pride now, and you know, you don't want to be seen to be the one pulling the plug after putting so much into this. And as for iGas, looking to start drilling at Tinker Lane and Missing Springs, well, for iGas investors, you know, you've seen how this company can literally destroy investment. Just look at their track record from 2014 onwards, and you know, they're about to do it all over again. So whilst iGas are still pushing to establish unconventional gas well sites in North Nottinghamshire, then you might as well throw your money down a black hole. Oh, you are throwing your money down a black hole. Well, you know what you need to do. Well, it's a fresh morning here up on the east, on the edge of the East Lancashire moors. Absolutely stunning yesterday, walking around some of the reservoirs up here, which, by the way, are extremely low. And of course, that is a whole other issue, that if this industry did take off, where the hell is the water coming from? Because it sure as hell ain't coming from the reservoirs around here, because there's barely enough water in these to you know, to take care of the residents in this part of Lancashire and West Yorkshire. Interesting times, eh? Well, meanwhile, if you're still following everything that's going on, then there's a few other things occurring, and I will be hosting an event in London called Democracy in Chains with some of the most insightful analysts and most up to the minute commentators on what's occurring as we look at how democracy is effectively being destroyed by the rush to corporatism. So you have a great day, and I will be back on Friday morning with more updates on the farce that is being created by CUADRILLA and Claire Perry. So catch you then. Take care now.